Welcome back everyone to the channel. Team, in this video I'm going to take a look at making the most of any extra help or support you can get in the classroom. Whether it's an education assistant, it's going to be a learning support officer, specialised teacher, whoever it happens to be. How can you and that person work as a team to get the most out of your students and the most out of your learning environment? Like always, team, if you can like and subscribe to the channel or do whatever you can to keep me getting this content out there, it'd be much appreciated. So, why support people help? We know through teaching, the classroom's getting more and more dynamic these days. It's not just behaviour, but the learning needs are so different within the class. Any support you can get in there to help the teacher is going to be massive. For this video, I'm going to focus on education assistants because that's been my most experience with support people throughout my time in teaching. In saying that, having an effective education assistant in your classroom makes a massive difference. It makes your life as a teacher so much better. Okay, just by having that relationship, that education assistant knowing the students, knowing the curriculum, knowing the teaching strategies, having the experience of what's worked with similar students and what hasn't before can save you a heap of grief as a teacher. On the flip side of that, having a person in there that doesn't necessarily know what they're doing or just at times can decide just to sit there and not do much can be frustrating as well. So how can we bridge that gap to make the connection between teacher, support person, students as effective as possible? So step number one is going to be setting clear roles and expectations. A bit of a game changer for me was a few years back. I had an awesome education assistant in the room with me for this class for the whole week, or a particular class. What I'd make sure I was do is before we walked into any lesson, once the bell's going to start the lesson or whatever, a few minutes before, as I'm waiting for students at the door, just to touch base education assistant and go, look, this is what's been working well. This is what previous lessons, this is where I plan to go to this lessons. Even chunk it down, the first 5 minutes of the lesson, the first 10 minutes, whatever. Can you focus on these students? Can you focus on this as a class? Even towards the end of that year, I was getting the education assistant just give me feedback as well. Just go, look, how'd that section go? Do we think this works? Now, I mean, that obviously that develops over time. I'm not expecting to do that straight away. But having that reflection, having that person in the class be able to put their experience to good use was huge. Okay, flip side of that, I have had over times, and I've seen and walking around in different classrooms and working with teachers and students, there can be education assistants there which aren't doing probably what they should be or what they're paid to do. Okay, I think it's important for the teacher to be on top of that. Okay, just communication. Now, if the education assistant has a little bit of conflict with what you're trying to say, as long as you're professional, I mean, that's on them as well. And then you look to get other higher powers involved. But my experience, most people, if you approach with human decency, they're going to be receptive to it. Okay, back to the roles as well. Once I've started the lesson, as I'm walking around trying to monitor students, just touch base with the education assistant or the support person. It's most likely, you know, once you've done it for a while and you've embedded those routines, they're going to know what's going on. But you can say the quicker you can get to what's working, what's not, the more effective it's going to be. Okay, and you set those expectations in the roles, have your structure in the class. You're keeping the students trained, you're keeping yourself trained, you're keeping the support person trained. Everyone's moving in the same direction. Step number two is share context. Okay, again, back to my most effective education assistants I've had in the room. I mean, their experience, either at the school or similar classes, was massive, but they knew the students as well. Okay, they'd work with them in different classes, they'd work with them over previous years. They knew what worked for that particular student, and they know what wasn't going to work. Okay, teaching and learning is so individualized, you can't just have a generic approach, or it rarely works. Okay, so having that experience and that education assistant sharing that context with me on a particular student or a small group of students was huge. Okay, and then I could tailor my teaching approach for those students. Most likely it's going to be in a mixed ability class. You might have some higher achieving students with some, you know, down to the other end with students having difficulties. As a teacher, trying to conquer across all that at one time, it can be difficult. Okay, and you can feel like you're doing a jack of all trades, master of none. Communicating to your education assistant where they need to be, whether it be focus on these students, focus on these students. Can you group those, you know, like abilities to get the most out of where they're going? Okay, that then follows on to use the education assistant's strength. Okay, they're not, so being a math teacher, most of my education assistants haven't been numeracy trained. It just happened to be, for whatever reason, they come from more of a literacy background or an English background. The strength there is what we're going to look at is, okay, anything to do with worded questions for the lesson, that education assistant has the techniques or the strategies to break it down and go, okay, this is what we're working with, this is the structure of the problem, here's where to go to from there. Okay, having those techniques to break down even just the vocabulary of the problems of the questions is massive. Okay, especially with a lot of standardized testing later in life or later in school for these high school students, it becomes more of a challenge just understanding the problem than actually doing the numeracy or the math involved. Okay, yeah, I mean, don't just let the education assistants, they've got to develop as well. Okay, I mean, I've had awesome education assistants where they're taking notes in the class of actually, while I've been up there, other teachers, and showing how, okay, this is how Miles or other teachers approaches this content. So when I'm working with small groups and I'm not necessarily in my comfort zone with the content, this is how I'm going to teach it. Okay. Step number 4, make sure you're communicating both ways. It's not just about, telling the teacher, I expect you to do this, telling the support staff, I expect you to do this. My most effective, or building the most effective relationships, professional relationships with support staff has always been two-way communication. What am I doing well? What do I need to improve on? And I weight what I need to improve on more. Okay, now there can be times if I'm tired and stuff, I don't necessarily want to hear that going in, but you train yourself to go, okay, improvement's the key at all times. Okay, even if it's just incremental changes, having someone else in the room, someone else that's consistent in the room and knows you, just being yourself open. Okay, you get rid of your pride, you're doing it for the greater good and you're doing it to help the students. Okay, now you're not having the education assistant or the support person take notes on you per se, or if you're comfortable with that, do it, but just a few lines, And again, that's going to become with building the relationship over time with the support person. Final point here is to model the collaboration, okay, that you expect. So if I'm doing some group work, I start with how I'm going to work with a small group. Okay, the education assistant can see what sort of my expectation for this is. Now they might be better or have better strategies for the group work, but if they're stuck, if they're feeling in the deep end, they're going to sink. This is a way to sort of, it's actions, not words. Okay, you're promoting what you expect and you're modeling that through actions. Okay, and you might have times where the education assistant comes and helps you out. Okay, positive feedbacks, thanks for jumping in, good idea, I'll try that tomorrow. Okay, all these things is going to build your relationship with the support staff. It's going to keep them engaged, keep you more fine-tuned, and overall the big picture is going to be developing and refining that positive learning environment for the students. So at the top of the video, having a good support staff in the room makes all the difference. Okay, again, thanks for listening. Any comments you have, experiences you've had with decent, either way, decent or not so fun, working with education support officers, education assistants, specialised teachers, let me know in the comments below. Like always, catch you next time. Thanks for listening.